The evening was eerily still, the silence only broken by the slow, methodical ticking of the wall clock. The faint glow of the dimly lit living room flickered across Sarah's face as she sat hunched on the couch. Her eyes locked onto the scattered family photos on the coffee table, the edges of the frames now smudged by the sweat of her trembling fingers. Each picture felt like a distant echo, a reflection of a past that had become twisted, like a reflection in a cracked mirror. She traced the edges of the frames with a trembling hand, her thoughts a storm of memories, some warm, others now stained by the dark ink of her own mind. The smell of her father's aftershave lingered in the air, an aroma that once made her feel safe, now suffocating. His deep, commanding voice still reverberated in her ears, demanding perfection, relentlessly pushing her to be more than she could ever be. Her mother's cold eyes, sharp as daggers, scrutinizing every move, every breath. Her brothers, always with their judgmental gazes, their cruel laughter when she failed to meet their impossible standards. Nothing had ever been enough. Nothing. Sarah's heart ached as she stared at the faces in the photos, now strangers to her. She had spent her whole life striving for their approval, chasing an ideal that seemed to slip further away with every passing year. Perfect grades, perfect behavior, the perfect daughter. But perfection was an illusion, a cruel joke, and it had trapped her in a cage made of her family's expectations. The tension had been building for years, and that night, it reached its breaking point. The dinner table had been silent except for the clink of silverware. Sarah could feel the weight of her father's stare like 1,000 needles pressing into her skin. He finally spoke, his voice like ice. "Why wasn't your valedictorian speech perfect? Why didn't you make me proud?" His eyes cut into her, a blade of accusation lodged between them. Her mother's calculating smile twisted on her lips as her brothers exchanged glances, amusement flickering in their cold eyes. It was always the same, her failures, their triumph. Her inadequacy, their superiority. The suffocating pressure, the weight of their expectations, the feeling of drowning in their indifference had reached its boiling point. The rage, the frustration, all of it bubbled up inside of Sarah. For the first time in her life, she snapped. Her hand clenched into a fist. She could feel the hot rush of blood to her face. She couldn't breathe. She couldn't think. The moment was like a jagged shard of glass piercing through her mind. If I just get rid of them. The thought flashed through her brain, a venomous seed taking root. It wasn't rational. It was pure, unfiltered rage, the kind of anger that stripped her of her humanity. A fleeting thought, quickly drowned out by the deafening roar of her fury. If they're gone, I'll be free. The gun was in her hand before she even realized what she was doing. Her father's prized hunting rifle. The same rifle he'd boasted about for years. The symbol of his dominance, his control. Felt right, too right. The shots rang out, sharp and final. Bang, bang. The silence that followed was more oppressive than any sound she had ever heard. Blood pooled around the bodies of her parents, her brothers, as Sarah stood over them, her hands still gripping the rifle. Her heart was thundering in her chest, but there was no fear, no regret, just an overwhelming, all-consuming sense of relief. She was free. At least that's what she told herself. But as the adrenaline began to wear off, the weight of what she had done settled in like a cold, unyielding fog. The house, once full of oppressive life, now felt lifeless, empty, hollow. Sarah left that night, slipping away from the scene of her crime, but she couldn't escape the gnawing sensation in the pit of her stomach. Freedom, once a shining beacon, now felt like a curse. The weeks that followed were a blur. She tried to go on, tried to bury the memory of that night beneath the facade of a normal life. But the whispers followed her wherever she went. The look in people's eyes, the way the walls seemed to close in on her, the loneliness that crept into her every thought. Her mind, once a battlefield of frustration, now seemed like a prison of guilt. What did I do? The question echoed over and over again in her mind, like a drumbeat, relentless and unforgiving. The people she had once called family were gone, and all that remained was their absence. The truth, she knew, would never stay buried. One afternoon, As Sarah sat on a park bench, lost in her own thoughts, a voice broke through the haze. Detective Lauren Harris. Sarah's pulse spiked, her breath catching in her throat. She had known Lauren since childhood, and the detective's sharp gaze never missed a thing. It was only a matter of time before Sarah's secret unraveled. "I know what you've done." Lauren's voice was soft, yet filled with an undeniable weight. Sarah froze. Her blood ran cold, her hands clammy. She didn't even try to deny it. The guilt, the fear, it was all too much. Her throat tightened, and the words came out in a strangled whisper. "I did it. I killed them. I couldn't take it anymore. They made me feel like I wasn't enough." Lauren's eyes softened, but there was no sympathy in them. "Sarah, I wish I could say I understand, but this isn't the way." It was too late for understanding. It was too late for redemption. The truth had come for her, and there was no escape now. As Sarah was led away in handcuffs, the reality of her actions slammed into her like a freight train. She had gotten what she thought she wanted, but at what cost? The emptiness inside her had grown, consuming everything, leaving nothing but cold regret in its wake. The courtroom was a blur of faces, familiar, cold, indifferent. The sentence was read: life in prison. The judge's words seemed to echo, reverberating through the hollow space inside her. Life in prison, forever trapped in a cage of her own making. As she was escorted away, the weight of her crime felt unbearable. The prison walls closed in on her, colder than the silence of her empty home. The life she had taken for herself was gone, replaced by a darker reality. The darkness inside her, the one she thought she could escape, now had her in its grip. The truth was, freedom had never been the answer. And now, all that remained was the crushing weight of her own guilt, her own choices, the lies she told herself to justify the bloodshed. In the stillness of her prison cell, with nothing but time to reflect, she realized that she had only exchanged one prison for another, one far more suffocating than the one she had lived in before. Every night, the ghosts of her family visited her in her dreams, their disappointed eyes, their cold voices, all haunting her with their silence. No amount of time or distance could erase the lives she had destroyed. The walls of the prison felt colder than the silence of her empty home, and as she sat alone in her cell, she realized the only thing that remained was the emptiness inside her. A place where freedom had once existed, but was now swallowed whole by the darkness. The truth was simple, but it was brutal. Sarah had killed her family just for the chance to be free. But what she had discovered was that freedom, when bought with blood, was never truly free. It was a lie, and now she would have to live with it for the rest of her life. Follow, like, and subscribe.